Welcome again, and let us pray. Heavenly Father, King of glory, we give you thanks for this moment. We thank you, Lord, because you are God and there is none like you. We give you all the glory for this moment. We pray, oh God, that even as we come together to learn, that you're going to be with us. Grant us wisdom and understanding. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. All right. So, this webinar is part of LionTech's efforts to recruit students for the diploma in DevOps, cloud, and cybersecurity. Don't know how many of you have seen this curriculum, but I'm just going to put it for you guys in the chat, okay, so you can um, take a look. So this is the program that we are currently admitting students for. And so we decided to host these webinars to explain the program as well as start the foundation for those who have already registered. Okay. So the program in itself, we call this program a diploma in cloud infrastructure, cybersecurity, and DevOps. And I'm going to explain why you need both. Okay, we're going to see this even in Linux as we get very deep in Linux, right? So let me go through the schedule. Okay. So this is how the program is structured. It's meant to run on the weekends. Okay. Weekends only. Saturday and Sunday, the tuition fee for the program is 3,500. But for those, all of you who are here in this webinar today, you will have a huge, scholarship for the program, right? You're going to have 70% scholarship for the program, okay, when you enroll, right? So you can see this is where we are at the moment, right? So of course, what we are starting with Linux fundamentals. So this is where we are on this curriculum. But when the program starts, okay, we what? We're going to start week one with IT and networking and all of that. And then, of course, we'll get into networking. Then we get into Linux. See that? Linux again, Linux, share scripting. So this is the journey, as in what you need, the skills that you need in order for you to become a cloud engineer, a DevOps engineer, a cybersecurity analyst. You need all of these skills. So these are the skills that you need to acquire. You need to have these skills, right there. So we have already developed the program like that and put it, week by week, just in case you are wondering, hey, what is the curriculum for this program, right? So this is the curriculum for the program, okay? And you are you are the right place and all of that. So the program is meant to run for effectively 9 months, and the 9 months does include it includes the career transitioning service that we offer. So, for example, interview preparations, resume, and LinkedIn preparations. This is all that we do, in the last month of the program. So, if you scale through everything, you're going to see everything that we are going to be studying. It's a very, very detailed curriculum, and I encourage you all to go. So at the end of my webinar today, I am going to, share a WhatsApp group link where you can join, if you want to take advantage of, of the scholarship. I think I'm just going to do it now before we start. So it's just this WhatsApp group here. Okay. So, yeah, this one. Because when I start now, I will not be looking to go back and forth. So I'll just do it now. Okay, enrollment, and there you go. Okay, so this is exactly what you're gonna do. You just need to join this group, and we should be good, right? So this one, exactly. So I'm gonna put in the charts, okay? And yeah, I have so many screens actually. I have more than 12 screens facing me, for different things. Anyways, yeah. So this is the program. If you want to explore more about our programs, of course, what? You can head to LionTechAcademy.com, right? You can see, so we have all kinds of programs that you can take to upskill yourself. But if you are looking at, career paths, you can go to diploma programs because, of course, if you are coming from a completely non-tech background, right, and looking at how you want to scale to tech on a very fast level, right, not just very fast, but also you want to scale in confidently, then of course, this is the program that you should be thinking about. So when you come here to book your orientation, okay, you can apply for an orientation. So what we do at LionTech is we want to build confidence, okay? We are building confidence. We want to make sure that people make up their minds objectively. So that means that you have gathered all the information required before you make this very huge investment. So to me, I see this like an investment that you are inputting into your career in terms of time and the financial resources that you're going to put in. That's what makes us different. That's why on our website you don't see, pay now or no. There's no such things. You book your appointment first. We like to get to know you, and we also like you to get to know us. So that's how we do business here at LionTech Academy Canada. All right. So basically you can see that. You can click there and you can learn more about, okay, the program. So at the end of the program, I am going to be offering a 70% scholarship. At the end of this webinar, we'll be offering a 70% scholarship, okay, for this program because this is what you should be taking at the moment, okay, and all of that. Okay, so if you have any questions, okay, as we progress, you can just go to the website. If there's anything you want, we have all the call to actions, all the CTAs are there. You can chat us on WhatsApp, at any point you can what? You can WhatsApp us directly from the website, just in case you are thinking, oh, how do I get in touch with us? You know what I mean? You can what? Chat on WhatsApp as well. So I can just put this link again in the website just in case, okay? You don't know how to get in touch with us. Okay, great. So let's now get to business in terms of what is it that we are going to be doing today. So, of course, we are introducing Linux. Okay, for anyone getting, wanting to get into tech, Linux is always a place to start. So let's talk about the career paths. Okay. Oh, okay. Anyways, I'm also building something here, so you have seen my stuff, right? Anyway, so now let's talk about what? Career paths, right? That's why we're here tonight, career paths. And I'm going to explain to you how Linux cut across all of that, right? So yes, of course, you're looking at, cybersecurity. That's what many of you want to enroll into. You have, DevOps and you have cloud computing, right? Cloud computing, yeah. Of course, we have computing platforms, okay, that offer cloud services. So we have GCP, okay, you have AWS, and you have Azure. All right. So this, you must what? You are required to know one very well because if you can master AWS very well, there's nothing you wouldn't be able to achieve on Azure. And of course, there's nothing you will not be able to achieve also on GCP. Why is that? Because these platforms are competitors. Know what I mean? So that means that Google Cloud, by the way, right? So GCP stands for what? It's equals to Google what? Google, okay, Cloud Platform, all right. And AWS is equals to what? It's equals to Amazon, okay, Amazon Web Services, all right, like this. And then we have Azure. It's just what? It's just Azure. It's also called Microsoft Azure because this is owned by Azure. So now what? So these are, okay, what we refer to as cloud platforms or what? Or cloud services platforms, okay? Cloud platforms or cloud what? Cloud services platforms. So now what you will discover in this program in month one is that what? Is that these platforms offer the exact same services, okay? Same thing. Networking, compute, storage, databases, okay, security, auditing, cost control, billing is all the same. Now, the implementation architecture may be different, but what? In terms of the principles, okay, the core principles are all the same, all right? So on these platforms, let's say what? Now you consider what? Common what? Common cloud, not common, okay? Common what? So common cloud service, okay? That's what? That is linked to Linux, right? So of course, what? On all of these platforms, you have compute services, right? Compute services. So what this means is that you have, organizations can decide to host their applications using what? Rental services in the cloud, right? So when you look at all of that, compute is what? These compute are what? Are virtual operating systems, right? So you have Linux here, okay? I hope that when we get to cloud webinar next week, you guys will understand this even better. So what? We have Linux, you have Windows, right? And of course, what? Then you have Mac OS, right? So these are what? These are all different types of operating systems, or what? The different categories of operating systems that all of these cloud services, right? That all of these cloud services they offer. Very, very important to understand. Know what I mean? Like that. So if you look at this carefully, right, it's called that what? That Linux is a must because when we learn Linux, you're going to what? You're going to learn how to create what? How to create Linux servers on any of these cloud platforms and log into the Linux server. See that? So that's what? That is the what? The relationship between Linux and cloud. And as a matter of fact, all applications, most applications, I would say 80% of what? Of applications today in the world are hosted on Linux platforms, okay? That is a fact. All right. So we see what? We see how Linux is cutting across all of that, right? It what? Cut across what? Cloud computing. Very, very important. Now let's what? Look at what? Linux and what? And cybersecurity, because so we're going to see why this program connects or how they connect. Okay. So one, we what? Let's first of all establish the fact that, okay, on Linux systems, we have what? We have multi what? Multi users, okay? Operating what? Operating the system, okay? So Linux is what we refer to as a multi-user operating system. So that means that at any one time, you are going to have, let's say, 100 users logged into the same computer. So when you have that kind of a scenario, what comes to your mind, right? Security, right? I mean, how do you implement control? access control, right, on the system. Therefore, what? About what? Access what? Access control, right? We call this in security what? IAM, right? This equal to what? Identity. See that? I what? Identity and what? And access management. See that? Access control. Very, very important. Okay. Users and what? And group management. See that? Again, what? Linux. Okay. Now, because you have a server and you have users locked into this server, you are going to be required to be able to what? To manage users as well as groups. Again, you see that? All of that happening on Linux. Okay. Of course, what? File permissions. Okay. File security. File what? File security is also, okay, another one, another function, something you need to be able to implement, right? Operating what? Operating system security. You see that? And then, of course, we have what? So we also have login. Okay, we have what? Systems hardening, right? Hardening what? System hardening, firewall protection, right? These are what? So these are all. So of course, what? Look at what? You look at just Linux, and you see the number of professions, okay, or career paths or tech paths that are what? That are coming together to, you know, to make it a secure system. So yes, why our cloud engineer is going to create for us a server, we want. We need a security mindset, or we need to have the skills, the security skills to what? To be able to manage users on the system using access control policies, managing what? Implementing what? File security, implementing what? Operating system security, implementing logging. Now, logs are so important. I hope you know that, right? Logs, okay, are so important. And do you know that your phone generates logs? Like, if you want to find out everything you've been doing on your phone since morning, right? There's a way you can extract all the logs, and it's going to tell you exactly what you've been doing. Maybe, at 10 a.m. you were on Facebook, at 11 a.m. you were watching YouTube and you were using for 1 hour. All of what? All of our devices are built with login systems. That's why, when someone commits a crime with a computer or a phone, they get their phone and they take their phone to a forensic lab. Of course, what? Not the blood lab, but what? A digital forensic lab. They can what? They are able to trace exactly what has been happening with this individual, or the pages on Facebook that they visited. How are they able to see that? Is because every operating system, have something we call a digital DNA, right? And with that DNA, we can what? We can use that to trace a lot of things. So logging is so important. It's for our security. And I'll quote one more example of logging, right? So let's say, for example, you are managing an environment, okay? And let's say we have been attacked by a hacker, for example. You know what I mean? So when the system is breached, okay, where do we start the investigation? You know what I mean? Like, how do we start the investigation? So from a cybersecurity perspective, the first thing you want to look at is the entries, right? The logs. So for example, who was the last person to log in? Or in fact, you want to what? Maybe you want to narrow down to the last, maybe last what? Last 36 hours logins. And then what? You want to be able to trace the identities of everybody who logged into the server. And what? Of course, what? As you are tracing, you're also what? Focusing your mind on the strange logins. So let's say, for example, right? So normally in cybersecurity, right, we need to be able to implement what we refer to as a virtual private network for every organization. And for most companies, they have their VPN. So, all their employees needs to connect on the VPN before they are able to what? To access, the company's internal resources. See that? That's what? Again, secure. So now, let's assume that everybody is logging in from a particular IP address. So you have 1,000 employees, and what? They are all what? Logging in from this particular address. That's what? That is how they get authenticated into the system. But now what? In the course of your login, you find what? You find a very strange, okay, login also that has no company identities, but that has been logging in as well, right? Of course, what? That becomes an issue to investigate. So how do you investigate that? You must what? You must go back to the logs, right? Logging and what? And monitoring in cybersecurity, okay, DevOps and what? And cloud. So logging and monitoring what? Cuts across everything, right? This is what? This is a very, very important skill that you need to be able to, you need to be able to, you know, to acquire, right? You could work for a company and all you do is monitoring, right? Like seriously. Okay. I remember I had a contract some time ago with HP, and all I had access to was what? Was their monitoring platform. So I would just wake up in the morning, log in the system, and what? And just start monitoring. Of course, I had directions. Okay, if you see this happening, do this. It's like, for example, let's say you work for law enforcement, right? And let's say you are responsible for watching the CCTV cameras that is covering maybe Ikeja, right? You have what? You have events that you are looking for. And say, oh, you know what? Yep. If you see an accident, call this person, right? If you see maybe, two people fighting, right? Call this control. You know what I mean? Like that. So we refer to that as playbooks. Okay, so playbooks are like directions that will tell whoever is monitoring what to do, you know, in every situation. So you see how Linux cuts across what, cybersecurity. So what? Talk about, firewall protection. So when your Linux server is launched, okay, firewall is all about, how do we control, okay, how do we control, access, right? So in most cases, we can what? We may only what? Allow access from what? From the VPN, from what? From the VPN server, okay? So no other person can what? Log into the server via SSH without what? Without coming from the VPI or what from the VPN server. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, right? So that's what that is part of security. So this is what you are going to be doing and all of that. So of course, what we have, very, very important as well is what is, authentication and what? And, authorization, right? Authorization, So what is authentication and what is authorization? Okay, so the same what? On the same Linux server, you may have access, okay, you may be authenticated, you may be able to log into the server, but you are not authorized to create a file, to delete a file, or to edit a file. That's what. So that is authorization. And I always explain this, using a very simple example, right? So, a lady can invite you over, okay, a very simple one, invite you over, Of course, what you come and say, hey, this is John. Of course, what she opens the door, you're what? Once she opens the door, you're what? You are authenticated. Now you're in her house. What can you do? Right? That what? That now falls under authorization. See that? So very practical skills that you need to be able to attain. So this is what? This is just Linux that I am explaining and why we need to understand, okay, and see how it cuts across all, okay, all the major fields that we're talking about: cloud, DevOps, and cyber security. Now, there's one thing about security I wanted to understand. Of course, what we hear about security, right? There's what? There's also something called, okay, what? Vulnerability assessment, right? Assessment. So before anything bad happens in a system, we what? We need to be able to carry out vulnerability assessments, right? You want to find out, hey, how vulnerable I am. How many of you have found out in the last 2 weeks how vulnerable you are, even as a person? Ladies especially, right? How many of you have thought about vulnerability in the last 5 days? Just maybe around anything, right? Or how many of you have carried out a vulnerability assessment? Maybe on your door. Why? What prompted you, Mr. Cypher? Right? Because you see, like, okay, if you have a Facebook account, let's say with about 5 million users, okay, do you think you are vulnerable? And what are you vulnerable to? So do you think somebody will have 500 users and the other person will have 5 million users? Who do you think is more vulnerable to attacks? I want to talk about attacks. It's not like somebody, insulting you. I mean, like, attacks that can see that account hijacked. Imagine somebody like Very Dark Man, right? He's well known, right? He's a popular guy in terms of followers, When he speaks, important agencies like, national security agencies, even the presidency follows his speech. You know what I mean? Now, him and maybe you, who do you think is more vulnerable in terms of the dangers that comes with such an asset, right? Of course, him, right? VTM is more vulnerable because think about it this way. What if tomorrow, for some reason, okay, the bad actors, okay, let's say, for example, okay, let's see, this is, for example, right, ADC, for example, hires a hacker from Iran, okay, to hack Very Dark Man's account and what? Use the account for their propaganda. Very Dark Man is going to be in trouble, right? He's going to be arrested, locked up, charged, and imprisoned. Why is that? Because his account has been hijacked. And so any information coming out of his account, it is presumed that he is 100% aware of that information and so should take responsibility for that. So companies what? Companies carry out vulnerability assessment. So now this alone, so this is where ethical hacking starts, right? Ethical. So for example, I could carry out, an assessment on Very Dark Man's account. I could try to see if he has multi-factor authentication enabled, right? You know, I could I could investigate to find out how many admins he has. And if all of those admins have multi-factor authentication, you know what I mean? Like that. That's what that is vulnerability assessment. So now, if I do that investigation and I discover, oh, you know what? Wow, this guy doesn't even have the multi-factor authentication. Wow. So you can just log into his account without maybe Facebook triggering, a code to his phone or a code to his email. So there is no such thing. That's what red flag. So now a black hacker will take advantage of that. okay, and exploit it, hijack it, and say, hey, very tech man, you will log out of your Facebook account. We are now in charge. We need 500 million naira within the next, 24 hours, or what? Or we are going to do irreparable. Now let me ask you a question. If you're a very dark man, 500 million ransom in demand, or your account will go into public damage. Which one do you think is better? Right? You will end up paying. That's why. Oh, I even saw the news. It looks like is it CAC? CAC, the organization in Nigeria that is responsible for issuing corporate documents. I think yeah, Corporate Affairs Commission, CAC, right? They had a data breach. Yeah, yeah. I think that was like 3 months ago, if I'm not mistaken. But it's fairly recent, even though it wasn't announced, right? They had a breach in their system. And like when you want to form a company with CAC, you have to send your signature and all of it. Just imagine the damage that breach is going to cause to the entire Nigeria's what? National security. Because now, if somebody have my signature or the signature of, let's say, for example, the director of UBA Bank, right? Because UBA had used that service to create the UBA company, that is a risk. Because now what? That signature can now be used to do some malicious things with it, right? So vulnerability assessment on the system. Why is that? Because files, folders, applications are what? Are hosted on systems. Is there anybody who is using, you know, WhatsApp in space, right? Nobody is what? Nobody is using what? WhatsApp in space, right? We have what? You are either using WhatsApp, we always, okay, yeah, right? We all have what? So we always use WhatsApp either what? On your computer. So as long as that stuff is on your computer, you what? You are vulnerable. How are you vulnerable on WhatsApp? Of course, let's say, for example, you run a business, okay, and you have WhatsApp desktop, for example, right? And you have people who visit you every now and then. You don't know their intentions, isn't it? And then maybe someone visits you, say, oh, you know what, man, you know what, let me just drive out, okay? Let me drive out and pick a beer. And of course, what? You've trusted them and you leave your WhatsApp open. Now the guy said, oh, you know what, let me just scroll through. Wow. Oh, wow. This is a big contract coming in, right? And of course, what? They hijack it. They start chatting. Oh, you know what? My number just got bad. Can you chat moving forward on this other number? And what? They send that and they delete it. That is a vulnerability, right? So when you hear about vulnerabilities, is what? It's all about systems, right? The phone in your hand is vulnerable. So when I say the phone in your hand is vulnerable, how can we expatiate that? Okay, just to gain your interest, right? Into what? Into Linux. Okay, because what? Linux hosts applications. So wherever applications are hosted, wherever, critical data is hosted, that what? That data or that platform becomes what? A target for, for exploitation. Okay, a target by hackers for hackers, right? So hackers can decide to target that particular system. And so how then, what do cybersecurity professionals or even DevOps or cloud professionals do? Is of course what? When you create a server, you want to be able to secure that server because when you create servers in the cloud, those servers are meant to conduct business. Okay, and anything that is conducting business, generating revenue, of course, what is going to be a target for hackers, right? Or for bad actors. And don't forget that when you talk about, being a target, it's not just for external, it's not just external, external factors, right? You could what? You could also be a target from internal. So even your own employees can target you without you knowing. And that's why you must what? You must have a security mindset. If you look at the phone in your hand, for example, this phone in your hand, I could look at your phone and I conduct a vulnerability assessment. I can look at it, oh wow, this guy has a very good phone, but he has no biometrics, just passwords. That's a risk. Know what I mean? Or you have a bank account and you have no biometrics, you have no multi-factor authentication. Okay. In fact, you just know what? You just know your password and your username log into your account. That is a multi, like a very, very big risk. That's a vulnerability there, right? So an ethical hacker will what? Would assess that environment and say, hey, you know what, boss, CTO, you need to implement multi-factor authentication. Otherwise, hackers or bad actors are going to take advantage of, you know, of this vulnerability. Most of the hacks that had happened in 2025 and 2026, if you read the report, is what is all about a vulnerability. I think there was a time last year when Microsoft was hacked, right? Part of Microsoft services were hacked. And on that day, I think we had this global blackout, especially North America. And I know that it might have affected Africa somehow. But in North America, for that particular day, we had what? So we had Microsoft services were down. So you go to any bank and what? The bank will not transact anything. Why? Because the services that they depended on was under attack, right? So of course what? And then when Microsoft released their report, which I read very well, right? It was that, the service provider that was providing that particular service had skipped some step in their patching. Oh wow. We know about what? Security what? Security patches. Okay? Patches. Patches. Okay? Security what? Security patching. Okay? Talk about this. Security what? Security patching. This is also what? What we do on what? What we do on softwares, right? On softwares. How many of you receive security patches from Microsoft every month? So Microsoft prompts you, not just Microsoft even, if you have these modern Android phones, right? How many of you do receive notifications to, restart your phone almost every month to install, maybe latest what? Security updates. Now, if you ignore that, you are creating a very, very serious vulnerability. Most people don't know that, right? So when they see those updates, say, oh, your system is going to restart, you want to do now, or you want to postpone, they postpone, and they keep postponing, right? That's what that is a serious what? Serious security vulnerability. Please, can you stop? I don't know who is doing this, but are you able to stop that? In fact, can you stop it? Otherwise, I'll take you out of the class. Okay. Can you just keep your yourself if possible? It should be possible, right? Just keep your hands to yourself, okay? Please do not write on my note because you distract me, all right? If I want to invite you to annotate, I will invite you, okay? But you cannot. Please don't do it. Somebody asked a question. Speaking of vulnerability and security, I always see WhatsApp saying that our messages are what? Are encrypted end to end. And senders and receivers are the ones who, okay, decrypt the key. How do people how do people messages get spied upon? Now, one thing, okay, there is something about, okay, platforms. So when platforms releases a message of, oh, you know what? This is a guarantee that what? That our staffs, okay, cannot read your messages. No other person, because this is what you need to understand about what about encryption, right? So let's say you are in Nigeria and what? You message me. Hello, Prof. Right? Now, what WhatsApp is saying is this, that in transit, right? When that message leaves Nigeria and is what is traveling to North America, to Canada, to meet me on my device, that nobody, in fact, the man in the middle, okay, MIT, right? The what? Man in the middle, MITM, yeah, okay. So man in the middle cannot intercept that message. Okay, so that's what we refer to as encryption in transit. So let me quote a very simple example. It may not make sense, but it's like, no, that will not make sense. Okay, I was thinking about something about money. Okay, yeah, but when security officials goes to a bank to collect money at the end of the day, right? They take the safe to the bank managers put the money and what? They key it. The security guys don't have the code to that, right? They only what? They only transport. So they are more like a transport protocol, okay? Taking what? The money from this end to this end. So if they were intercepted, okay, there's no way that, the armed robbers can decode that. Okay, why? Because what? They don't have the decryption key. So, but what WhatsApp does and almost all the services, right? In fact, on every website, it's not even it is not even their making. It is a law, right? Privacy. Every platform must guarantee privacy and what? And protection of personal information, right? Okay. So because see, do you know how many users WhatsApp has as a date? Right? More than what? More than 2 billion users. Is there anybody you know who is normal, who doesn't have a WhatsApp account? Right? Is there anyone you know? Right? So of course what? WhatsApp is a platform that can cause national security issues for any country, right? So they have enormous pressure, right? An obligation to enforce security. Just imagine that, okay, let's just say, for example, right, Aso Rock, for example, okay, all the staffers in Aso Rock, they have a WhatsApp group. Of course, because see, WhatsApp is meant for communication, fast communication, right? Nobody wants to go checking their emails, okay, on what's happening, okay, and all of that. Of course, we check emails, but of course, what? WhatsApp makes it, super extremely easy for us to communicate and stay up to date. Yeah, they have a WhatsApp. Do you know what it means if the chat from that WhatsApp group becomes leaked online? Or maybe, the chief of staff was talking to the vice president about something very sensitive. Maybe, how he took a girl to a hotel, from the University of Maiduguri some time ago and had fun. And then what? That message is not secured. Okay. For some reason, it finds itself online, not from the receiver, not from the sender, but what? But from the man in the middle. That is a serious risk. So what WhatsApp is guaranteed is that what? Is that, yep, we guarantee that what? That your message, we have what? End-to-end encryption. What that means is that the message meant for the receiver is what is meant for the receiver. In the course of the transit, okay, nobody can read that message, not even WhatsApp. So that is a guarantee, and so we trust them. So if it happens that somebody is reading your messages, of course, what that becomes a very, very big lawsuit. You know that you can sue them to their death, right? You can sue them in billions of dollars because what? Because they have breached the trust. So it's a very, very serious responsibility. So when they say that, they mean it. Now, how do people's messages get spied upon? I don't think people's messages get spied upon. It's very difficult. However, there are legal situations where, for example, WhatsApp may be required to provide a backdoor. So, say for example, like this, like in the case of Boko Haram, right? A very good example. Let me what? That's what. So that is a situation where you know the what the government of Nigeria can say, hey, you know what? This number, this account is of interest to us, right? But they can go through, you know, they can what? They can go through, to the court, right? And get what? A court injunction and serve WhatsApp with all the evidence that, hey, listen, there is a bombing that happened in Maiduguri, right? And this is a terrorist organization. See that? This is what a terrorist organization using your platform to plan and organize what terrorist activities. We want to be able to spy their message. Now, under that circumstance, WhatsApp is allowed, is what? Is legally, let's see, like what? Is legally obligated to what? To allow access. So in that case, they what? They are going to give a backdoor. So now you see that what? That what? Maybe what? They what? The Nigeria Intelligence Service now what? Is monitoring that particular sector. People for what? For the purposes of national security. That can happen. But a normal citizen like you and I, we don't have too much threat to the government now. Have you threatened to you know what I mean? You don't have any issue with the government. Why would the government want to spy on you? Are you trying to understand what I'm saying, right? Who was that? Cypher, right? Cypher. Do you understand the logic, right? So of course, what you what you would you are not of any interest to them, except what you are a subject of national security, right? And there's evidence that this number is committing crimes. That's why I don't know if you know that WhatsApp has bots that will even automatically ban that number, all the numbers, and delete the groups and archive the chats for what? For the purpose of tomorrow. Okay. So that is what it means. So when WhatsApp says that your messages are encrypted end to end, it means what it says. Okay. So don't be scared about that. Okay, so of course, so when we talk about Linux, right? These are what? These are all the things that we need to be able to perform on any what? Linux system. First, what? We're going to have different users and group. How do you create a user? How do you add a user? How do assign permission to different users, right? And all of that. The other thing, very, very important. In fact, the most important and the most crucial element on every Linux server is what? Is file security, okay? File what? File security. And of course, what? So this is also a skill that what? That cuts across all tech fields, okay? With AI, DevOps, okay, data analytics, in fact, file security also what? Even on Windows. Now let me show you, okay, a very simple example. Okay, let's what? Let's take this file, for example. See this file here? It's called what? LionTech Expo Boya to 2020. So if I go to what? Let's go to properties, right? I'm going to show something here. If we go to see that, this is what? So look at this file and we go to properties, okay? See this here? Perfect. So even on my Windows, I can what? I can enforce file security. See this here? This is okay. I have what? These are signatures. I don't have any for now. But what? Security. See that? Now, every file that you create on any system has what? Has these permissions. Okay? You have full control. What does full control means? Right? You can modify. You can only what? Read and execute. You can read. You can write. You can, okay, do a special permission. Let me ask you a question. If you deploy an app or you have a website, let's say it's a restaurant application, okay, it has a web app, what kind of permission will you give your end users? Will it be read or write? But let me explain, okay? Read is they can what? They can, read. They can get in, they can read everything about your website, your services, your prices, everything. And what, they can fill forms and submit. That's execute. So they can read, write, and they can execute, right? Like they can execute a form. It's like an action that they're taking on the form that you have allowed them to do. So that's execution, right? Like for example, you go on a website and you have an application form. You are inputting your details. And that's when you are executing. But can you modify the form? Can you delete the form? Right? I don't say like that. So you can read the information on the website and then what? You can maybe, do a contact us form where you can contact A, B, C, and D. You can submit your information and all of that. That's what. This is core to everything. Security, DevOps, and what? And cloud computing. By the way, let's not forget, okay, there is a WhatsApp group again. I'm going to share the link. All right, so that you can join. Let me know if you like to. Oh, I already shared, right? Let me share it again, okay? So that we don't forget. Okay. How come I'm not seeing it? All right. Okay, but you understand what I'm saying, right? So of course, what now? So that is what we are talking about. So you see, so now of course, what I can what? So let's say I have multiple users, right? Okay, like this guy now. See that? What if I want to deny? So even in our homes, okay, in your homes where you are, or when you were growing up with your parents, okay, how many things were you allowed to do? And how many things, or how many, like, what was the allow to deny ratio, okay, in your home when you were growing up? Okay, there were what? There were things you were allowed to do, and what? There were things you were not allowed to do, isn't it? True or false, right? There were things you were allowed to touch. So for example, maybe growing up, you're allowed to cook rice, but you're not allowed to boil eggs. Right? Right. You get what I'm saying, right? So of course, what now, if I have multiple users on this system, I want to what? I want to be able to control who can modify what? This file. You get what I'm saying? This is what? This is file security. So therefore, of course, what? In this case, I can edit it right there. And of course, see that I can what? I can deny or I can allow, right? All of that. I can add, I can cancel this. You see that? I don't want to enforce that. So I can what? I can deny to a point where what? If anybody logs, because I hope you also know that your laptop is a multi-system, it's a multi-user operating system. What I mean is this. So what I mean is that you can have what you can have multiple accounts. The only difference is that you cannot have more than two persons logged into the same laptop at the same time. Okay, that's not possible for now because what? It's a local system. But in the case of a remote system where you can have multiple users logged in at the same time, there is what? There is definitely what? Need to enforce what? To enforce file security. Okay, so you see where we are getting to and why this is so important, right? Like that. So this is very, very crucial for us to understand and to be able to what to implement. So of course, you want what? You want to be able to implement this. So I can what? I can enforce this across everything. See that? This what? This is a folder right there, right? I can again what? Go to file security. I can look at the properties here. And again what? See that? Go to security. I can what? I can again secure that folder. But of course, this is what? This is just on my Windows computer. In the working environment, you are going to be working on Linux. So how are you going to enforce? Okay. How are you going to enforce that? Give me a second. I want to grab water. So this is what we mean by what? By file security, right? File security. Many of us also work in organizations where what? Where there is strict file security, isn't it? Almost everywhere you work now, let's say you work in the corporate world, right? You work in the bank, work maybe in the consulting, okay? Service, there's what? There is file security. You just can't go about reading what? Reading the files of every client. Except what? Except the client is assigned to you, right? You just cannot go ahead and looking at all the files. Of course, except you are also authorized, right, to do that. Maybe you're an auditor or you are you're the manager in charge, okay? And so you have that permission to do that, right? But that is also very, 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 very important to know that learning Linux is not just a matter of, it's just another skill. No, it's what? It's a very, very critical skill that we need to have, right? So let's get started then. So now we what? We have talked about, okay, that's what, okay, let me come back. So again, I'm just keeping this chart so that I can be able to get in touch with all of you, okay, who are in this class now, this webinar. Let me see those who are here, by the way. Let me see. Yes, like, oh, I can see. Oh, I see. Okay, AG Felix, Chidima, okay, Emily, Shingozi is here, and Jin and Jinke, Cypher, Livinus. Oh, Livinus is my old student, Noel. How did they get here? I also see Silva Michael. Okay, great. Anyways, you're welcome. Learning never ends, right? Never ends. So that, all right. So now we what? Now with what? We've been able to establish, okay, why this is so important. Okay, very, very important. What you want to be able to learn all of this because what? Because these skills are necessary. Oh yeah, so I have Livinus here. He's my current trainee, and you know what? I'm going to ask him to unmute at some point to share his experiences so far because he's been in the program again from a very non-tech background. You will hear from him. I did not invite him over; he just came. So I don't know how he even learned about this. It's all one platform, so sometimes information flies across boundaries. Okay. So of course, what Linux? Okay. It's a multi-user operating system. And of course, what? As a DevOps engineer, cybersecurity engineer, or cloud engineer, you want to what? You want to be able to implement all of that. File security, access control, user and group management, operating system security, patch management, vulnerability assessment, patch security, and what? And systems hardening. These 11 core functions, you need to what? These are the skills that employers are yearning for. If there's a word like yearning, they are yearning for this one because you are gonna be their guy, right? You are their guy. Okay. How about DevOps? Why is DevOps? How does DevOps come in the picture? So DevOps here and what? And Linux. Okay. So where is the intersection for this? Just like what I explained before, what? Your applications are going to what? are going to run on Linux. Okay? So of course what? One, yeah, what? Applications. So of course, Linux what? Linux will what? Host your what? Your DevOps application. Okay? Applications. So by the way, let's scale down and what? Talk about what is DevOps to begin with. Okay? So what is DevOps? Dev, okay, plus what? Plus ops. So dev is what? It's equals to software development. Okay? Development of what? Of softwares. Okay? And then operations is what? Is delivery. Okay? And what? And day-to-day management. Okay? Day-to-day what? Management of the software. So let me break this down so you can understand what DevOps engineers do. And I'll use my example, right? So I work for a ticketing company, okay? It's a company that does lottery, okay? So when you go to anywhere, if you're in Canada or in the US, when you go to any of these big stores or supermarkets and you buy, you buy a lottery ticket, right? And you go online on a platform and you enter the ticket number and you play lottery. We are the ones who are supporting that platform. Okay? One. Okay, so now how do that come? How do we put all of that together? So first one, so we have a business idea, right? So $1 million in dollars say, oh, you know what? Yeah, I want to build a platform. I want to build an application that would achieve 1, 2, 3, 4 things that will help me generate money or make money in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways. Right? That's the idea. Then of course what? They go ahead and they get maybe a project manager. Now the project manager says, oh yeah, you know what? I know of a software development company down the street who can what? Who can listen to you and develop this idea into what you are looking for. So now what? The business, the founder, and the software development company gets together and what? They start what we call planning, okay? Developing the project in terms of, okay, what will you need for this particular application? What are the features that you're looking for? In fact, how will you make money? In fact, what services are you providing? In fact, what problems are you solving, right? Exactly. That's where it starts. So you have this back and forth between, this non-tech guy, but who has the money, is a millionaire in dollars, right? Who wants to build this. So what? He wants to fund it. He has the funds, but doesn't have the ideas or the know-how. Therefore, what? He contacts a software development company. So the software development company is what? You can say, yeah, you know what? We can build it using Java. So yes, of course, we may need 5 Java developers, or we need 2 Python developers, or we need, to use maybe Next.js or whatever software that they will need. So now in this case, they go ahead and of course what? They hire some developers. Now they already have what is known as the project documentation or the project requirements, okay? Or the product requirements. It's a high level documentation that describes each feature of the application, how it should be built, how it's going to behave, and of course how it's going to help the company generate money. See that? Very, very important. So now the developers go to work with what? With that picture in mind. So it's like you hiring, a wedding planner. How many of you have worked with wedding planners before? Okay. It's the exact same process, right? What does a wedding planner do? Right? The lady comes down to you and say, yeah, okay, great, wow. Okay. So you want a wedding, oh wow, what's the capacity? Oh, why? Of course, I'll be expecting 5,000 people. Oh, wow. See that? You're what? You're giving what? You are providing requirements, right, to the planner. Okay. 5,000 means what? Maybe now we're looking at a very, very big hall. Okay. Or how do we manage the reservation systems, right? And all of that. So now what? Just that requirement alone what? Changes the entire execution plan, right? Like that. So the software company now what? Goes to work. And of course, what? They have to go ahead and write the code. So now let me show you, right? See something here. So what? This is an example of an application. See this here? This is what? So this is code. Okay, see this here? These are what? These are codes. And I'm going to show you the application. This is what? So this code is what? Is responsible for this application you see here, right? The what? The LionTech Expo application. This is the source code. See that? This is the source code for this application. So now you can what? So we have home, we have speakers, you have agenda, you have tickets, you have gallery, sponsors. Everything you see here, what? It's files. These are what? These are all files. That's why I would imagine that, tech is all about files. Different files that perform different things differently. Okay? Like that. So we have this, all right? Like this, and of course, I can show you some other time. Okay, of course, if you enroll in the program, okay? So now we have this, right? You have this kind of a system. So of course, what? The developers write that code that you saw. So now, how that code gets to the App Play Store or to Google or to Microsoft, in fact, how it gets online is operations. So, like for example, you are running a kitchen business or a restaurant, right? You have your cook and you have what? You have your servers and your cashier and maybe what? Maybe your delivery driver. Okay? An order comes in. The order what? Goes to the kitchen. The cook develops the order and then what? The servers take it to the accountant. The accountant records. And then what? The driver picks it up and delivers it. Everything from the chef to the driver is what? Is operations. Okay? I mean, from what? Yeah, from what? The chef? No, not the chef. Okay? From what? From the server. Okay? From the server. The person who is what? Who is serving the food, right? The server, the accountant, okay, and the driver forms what? Forms part of your operations team. But who is the developer? The developer in this case is the cook. So DevOps is what? It's a software development methodologies. Okay? So it's a concept that brings together developer and operations to work together, right? On what? On software. Okay, on software, right? Like that. So that's what happens between what? Between developers and operations. So the developers write the code and what? DevOps engineers, and this is what you'll be getting enrolled in, right? Now what? It's going to be our responsibility to what? To take that code, transform the code, okay, test the code, okay, and build the code and deploy. So we have a couple of key practices there. So first one, the developers build the application or they write the code. Now what? We have to be able to build that code. So like what you see here, you see what? You see these are what? These are just codes. See this one? Just what? Just codes. Now, for this code to become something useful, it has to what? it has to go through packaging. Okay? Packaging, building, packaging, and what? Testing, and then what? Deployment. Okay? Very, very important. Just like, if you are running a restaurant, you don't just cook and then go and serve to your customers, right? You have to what? You have to test, you have to package, and then what? We have to package, test, and go and deliver the food, right? Like that. So DevOps, which is a very, very important skill, okay, is what? It's all about how applications is delivered through collaboration between what? Between developers and operations. Okay? Is it clear? Anyone have a question with that one? Anybody have a question with that one? Anybody have a question so far with that? Okay. So what? So that is what DevOps is. So therefore, you want to what? You want to understand Linux. Why? Because what? Because Linux is that platform where this application is going to be hosted. Just like, your what? Your WhatsApp app can either be what, be what? You can whether what? When you want to download WhatsApp, you must have what? You must have either a phone. The phone can be an Android or what? Or iOS, right? Or you can have a laptop. It can be for Windows, Mac, or Linux. So you must have a platform on which the application is going to work. Otherwise, how else are you going to work it? How else are you going to use it, right? So, Musa, are you able to join this WhatsApp group so that I think you joined late? But of course, what? So this is all about orientation. Okay, Musa, thank you so much. Okay. I'm even so happy that you are here tonight, right? That makes a lot of sense. Join the WhatsApp group and what? We are going to call you for your one-on-one orientation, okay? Don't worry. So, but I hope you are here because you want to learn tech, right? You want to enroll, you want to, pick up a career in tech. Is that so? Because otherwise, then you are in the wrong place. Maybe not, but it's always welcome. Okay. So this is what you are going to be learning. Okay. These are the skills that you are going to be acquiring in what? In the course of your 9 months with us if you choose to enroll in the program. So now let's say we now want to start learning Linux. So how do I learn this Linux? Where do I start? Okay, learning what? Linux. So of course, Linux hosts application, and of course what? Because this app is hosted and because this app is used to generate money for the business, it becomes what? So important for us to enforce security, right? And when it comes to Linux, as a tech person that you are being trained to become now, you're going to need to convince your clients. You know what? Do you really want to go buy 1,000 servers and build a room and put them there, or you want to use cloud instead? You know what I mean? Like that. So you have to what? You need to have this conversation. But there is something also you need to understand is that not all not all operations legally are allowed to run in the cloud. Know what I mean? Like that. If you work for the EFCC, for example, right, or Passport Nigeria or Immigration Nigeria, okay? So the Nigerian Immigration Service runs what? Runs a lot of services. Part of it is national identification. No. I don't think so. But what? They're in charge of passports. And of course, passport is linked to what? It's linked to all the other core, foundation of national security. Okay, and identification is one. There is no country on earth where you can have a passport without what? Without, first of all, being identified. I hope you know that. So no matter how crazy the world we live in is, there is what? There are still a lot of areas of agreement that cut across borders. Okay. No matter how corrupt a country is, they have what? They have a national identification system. Why is that? Okay. You should be telling me. Why do you think the first thing a policeman is going to ask you when they stop you on the road is, can I see your ID? Why is that? Why is your ID so important? Okay. Why is your ID so important? Of course, what? Yeah, but so why do you need to be identified? That's the point I'm making, right? Why? Why is it important? Again, you're not answering it, but what there is one word, right? So why do you need to be identified? Why is the government so interested to know who you are to a point where they want to give you an ID? Why is that? Why do you think if when you get employed in the company, you are given a badge, okay, and the badge carries your employee ID? Why is that? Or when you were in a university and you had a university ID. Why was that? Right? Musa, Cypher, blessings, what? The one word is what? The one word is national security. It is security. In your university, the reason why they give you a badge is what? Is to be able to filter those who don't have IDs. So let's say, for example, something went wrong in the library, right? They can what? They can block the library and check everybody's ID. Because what to issue you an ID, you must have what? You must have been accepted into the university. So not every services can run on the cloud for what? For national security reasons. So my example was what was with the immigration services in Nigeria. They have a very wonderful. In fact, I watched a video when, in fact, Nigeria is blessed with this minister of I don't know the minister of immigration. He is so smart. I watched his video. I watched him explain DevOps, and I was like, oh boy, this guy is something else. Like he is so the day he was in the position on the, I think that was on the channels TV. I watched it, and I was so, believe me, I was so envious of him that I wanted to become a Nigerian. You know what I mean? To be very honest, I was like, oh God, even though that I have already gotten married, I for don't marry one Nigerian now that I've become a Nigerian. You know what I mean? Like that. But the day after day, you know what I mean? Like, but believe me, the guy is so smart, talking about, oh, so this sprint, we are deploying this, and of course, so now the reason why you cannot host that in the cloud is why? It's because the immigration service is what stands at the core of national security. Okay, in terms of what? In terms of what? The data, data protection, data sovereignty. Because what all the national identities, your national what identities, your maybe BVN, right? All of that is what is being managed by this central agency. So you go and put it in the cloud. Maybe the cloud is hosted maybe in South Africa. What happens tomorrow if Nigeria has an issue with South Africa? Okay, it's a problem. If you go and you host it, maybe okay, in US is one, in North America. You see that? Of course, what? Trump can look at man and say, "Oh, you know what? I don't like this Nigerian government the way they're dealing with Christians in the north. No, let's what? Let's hijack this their data, until they fix these issues. Okay, don't give it to them. See that? That is why in Canada or in North America they have a lot of like data laws. A lot. There are some services that you cannot host outside the national territory of some nations. Why is that? Because of what is known as data sovereignty. The world is ruled based on what? Who has access over data. Okay, so there's a mad rush for data collection, data harvesting. All right. So that's why, no matter how fancy cloud online is, right, not all services in a country will go online. Of course, you can host a small, maybe like if you're doing your commercial business, right, you can what? You can host anywhere you want to host, you are allowed. You know what I mean? But when you're dealing with health information, financial information, national what? National identification information. Those what? Those becomes very critical facet of a country's national sovereignty. So no country is going to allow you to host that data outside of their national territory. That's why you see like countries in Nigeria, I think I saw somewhere they're even building their own cloud now. Very soon Nigeria is going to release its own cloud platform, just like the US. You know what I mean? Like that. So those happen. So that means that data can be stored in the cloud, but what? It's within Nigeria. So it cannot be hosted in Ghana because Ghana can say one day and say, you know what? Let's give me this Mr. Tinubu a small slap here. I'll be slapping you anyhow, right? So that becomes so important, okay? So DevOps has what? A direct and a critical relationship with Linux, just like cybersecurity and cloud. So now, how then do we get started? How do we what? How do we get started? Get what? With what? With to that. So I have just 30 minutes to go because I know that most of you are in Africa and it's going to be 12 a.m. very soon. I don't want you guys to, yeah, okay. But if you want, maybe we can also have this again. We can do it again on the Wednesday. How about Wednesday? Wednesday make sense? Everybody? Right? So we can also do it on Wednesday. Okay. Yeah. Same time. Was the timing good enough? Was this timing very good enough or okay? Was the timing good enough or is too late? It's okay. Make sense? Okay, great. Okay, same time. Okay, good. So what? We'll let you guys know, but yeah. Okay. So this is what we have seen, right? Like that. So how then do we get started? First, what? You have to what? Learn what? You must learn command line. Okay, command line what? Command line operations. You must learn command line operations. It's very, very important because so this what? This will introduce to what? To command to what we call what? We call this the CLIs, right? So you must know that we have what? So we have two types of what? Two types of interfaces. Okay. So we have what? One, we have the CLI and GUI. Okay. GUI. Okay. And GUI. Oh, I have a quiz. Okay. GUI stands for what? Stands for graphical user what? User interface, okay? And CLI stands for what? Stands for command line what? Interface. Now, this is the two things you must have very strong confidence in before what? Before you even think of getting into anything tech, be it cybersecurity, DevOps, or cloud computing. Okay. So, all right. Now, everything we are doing, like most of you are what? Most of you are already using okay GUI. See that is what? This is called a graphical user interface. Why? Because we see I have what? I have this dashboard. I have this graphic that I can use my mouse. It's very easy. Most of us are already used to this one, okay? But what we need to learn as part of this journey is what? Is the command line interface. So to get started, how do we then get how to what? How to get what? Get started with what? With CLI. So first we're going to what? Let's install what? A CLI tool called what? Called Git Bash. Okay. So we're going to install Git Bash, and that's what we are going to use to start learning Linux. Okay. So once we install this, all right, so we're going to what? We are going to install this. So let's install this. So let's come here. And of course, we can go to, okay, see that? Let's come here. And then what? We type git bash, okay? Git bash. Git bash downloads, okay? So you come here, of course, what you see, so this what? So this is the installer. I'm going to share a video on how to work. I've also just put this also in the WhatsApp group, okay, where you can see the download links there. So you say, okay, you want to what? Install for Windows, and so am I to install? Because what? Oh, don't worry. Okay, don't worry. For now, what? You're age to learn, isn't it? We what? We are not yet even at Linux. You're a very, very advanced person to begin with. So, okay, but I have newbies here that I have to groom in the way that God expects me to groom them. Okay, so allow them to grow, just like you also grew. Okay. So let this ones, but of course, yes, please install Git Bash. If you've never used it, it's a great tool to learn. And what? It's just another skill that you are learning. So yes, of course, it's important. Okay. It's education. It's good. It's important. So yes, do it. So now I'll share the link in the WhatsApp group. Can we install Android? No, sir. I'm not sure, but you can try. Maybe you can invent a new way of doing that, right? So once you install Git Bash, just what? Search here and what? You can just type what? Git Bash on your search bar, and you're going to see your Git Bash there, and you are going to just click, 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 and open it. Okay. So that's you can what? Click here to download Git Bash, and so when you click next, 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 and you install it, you what? You are going to get something like this. So I'm going to share a video on how to install Git Bash, okay? I will share it just now. And you are going to see. Okay, so you are going to see. You can what? So I'm going to share it's going to be a 10 minutes video on what? On how to install Git Bash, okay? How to install Git Bash. So make sure you install it, okay? Yeah, there you go. I've seen it now. So I'm just going to share this. Install what? Install Git Bash on Windows because I expect all of you to have. I really love to follow up this class. So, see that? Like that. So here's the thing, okay? So now you have this, okay? That's what? So that is the video. If you have any help, we are directly there on WhatsApp to help you, okay? So I've shared the message, okay, the video. It's a YouTube video that I recorded on how to guide you, okay? Just watch the video critically well, and you are going to just be fine. But if you have any questions, okay, we are more than happy to help. See that? There you go. So once you install your first tool, we should be able to get going on Linux. Okay. So I think it's fair to end here today and talk about something instead so interesting. So you see